We're going to be taking a look at the book of Matthew today, a book that concerns itself with the kingdom of Hashemayim, or the kingdom of heaven. And we're going to be looking specifically at the parable of the sower. Yeah, we're going to talk about the parable of the sower. All right, let's jump right in. Got my first reader read Matthew 13, 1 through 9, please.
And that same day Yahushua out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell into stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, and some 30-fold. He who has ears, let him hear.
Hallelujah. Thank you. All right, so who was Yeshua speaking to? The multitudes. And as was customary for him to do, he spoke to them in parables. You know, and that's an interesting concept because, you know, overall, Yah is the word of Elohim in its totality. You know, and in all actuality, he's still speaking to us in parables. You know, all of the word that's been given to humanity is like unto the way that Yahushua spoke. For he's the same today, same yesterday, today, and forevermore. It doesn't change. And many of the things, you know, in Scripture are in parables and are allegories and similes and so on and so forth. And it's just him that expounds it unto those whom he chooses, even as we're going to see him expound this parable to whom he chooses. You know, hence he says, who have ears to hear, let him hear. The reason being, because everyone can't hear. And everyone can't see, and that's by design as well. You know, in verses 10 through 15, it goes on to saying, the disciples came to him and said unto him, why speakest thou unto them in parables? You know, there's a reason why he does that. And he answered and said unto them, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of Hashemayim, or the kingdom of heaven. But to them it is not given. Now who's the you in that passage? Even the disciples, absolutely. Disciple means the students. And it's still those students now today who have ears to hear and eyes to see that Yah reveals the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. It goes on in verse 12, it says, for whosoever have, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever have not, from him shall be taken away even that he have. Therefore, because of that, speak I to them in parables. Because they see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. See, they had much of the word that was in existence during that time, was entrusted unto them. One place in scriptures calls them the oracles of Elohim. It was entrusted unto Israel as a nation. And so much was given unto them. But it's being taken away. And this is what this what Yeshua is speaking to. In verse 14 and 15, he goes on to say, and in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Yeshayahu or Isaiah, which saith, by hearing ye shall hear and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see and not perceive. For this people's heart, why? This is the reason. For the people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and should understand with their heart and should be converted, and I should heal them. In other words, he's saying that they earned this. They earned this. They earned the parables in which he speak to them. They earned the blindness of their eyes and the hearts waxing gross and their dull ears. But it speaks of this prophecy being fulfilled of Isaiah. And to be honest with you, it never really dawned on me, as the significance of this. I knew it was fulfilled prophecy, but but today he had me dig a little deeper, into that prophecy. So when we take a look at the prophecy that Yeshayahu prophesied concerning this, we find that it's actually a two-part prophecy, which becomes very important when we consider what Yeshua said. In Yeshayahu 6:8-10, it says, also I heard the voice of the Adonai saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Yeshayahu, that is, or Isaiah, here am I, send me. And he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not. And see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert and be healed. Yahushua told us that this prophecy was fulfilled during the time he was here in the flesh. But it's a two-part prophecy. What about the second part, or part two of the prophecy? And that's what's important. Both parts are important, but what's important is Yahushua lets us know explicitly when it began. So we know when part one is. And so then we can, from there, consider part two. So we know it began with Yeshua. But that was, we read the first part. The second part goes on in verses 11-13, goes on to say, then said I, Adonai, how long? Yeah, he made the heart of the people fat, and he made their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and convert and be healed. He made them so they wouldn't hear and they wouldn't see, specifically the words of Yeshua. But it's only for a time. Hence, Yeshayahu says, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate, and Yahuwah have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return and shall be eaten as a teal tree and as an oak, whose substance is in them. When they cast their leaves, so the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. And a lot of people, wondered about this prophecy, and they believe that it was fulfilled, during the time when the Yahudim was sent into Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar, and it was believed to be fulfilled, you know, also um, with the northern 10 tribes being sent into Syria, and is believed to be fulfilled during the time of Yahshua. But there's greater fulfillment that's gonna complete it. That's gonna complete this part too. And the second half gives the keys to understanding it. We know what happened. We know that they didn't hear. They heard Yahshua, but they didn't hear him. They heard him, but they didn't understand him. And they did not perceive who he was. Their heart was fat. Their ears were heavy. Their eyes were shut. They didn't see, and they didn't hear, and they didn't understand, and they weren't converted, and they weren't healed on the most part. But this is for a length of time. And it's until the cities be wasted without inhabitant. Now that happened, a time or two, and that's why a lot of quote unquote scholars, figured that was it. That was the fulfillment of it. But Yahshua gives us the key. It was fulfilled in his time. For he says, this day, this prophecy is fulfilled in your ears. He let us know when this fulfillment began. So that will go on for a time after that fulfillment, until the cities be wasted. Now all this happened. The cities were wasted. The houses were without man. The land became desolate. After Yahshua had resurrected and was gone in 70 A.D., the temple was destroyed. The temple was destroyed, and everything that's said here actually happened. And it lay desolate, and it was without inhabitant for a very, very, very long time. And then in 1948, something happened. Well, if we go on with the prophecy, it speaks of Yahweh having moved men far away. But in verse 13 he says, "But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, and shall be eaten as a teal tree and as an oak, whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves, so the holy seed shall be the substance thereof." Now, it's kind of confusing the way in which the translators translated. The word eaten is ba'ar, and it's number 1197. It means to kindle, that is to consume by fire. So it's literally saying, but yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, and it shall be consumed by fire. That's actually what it's speaking to. As a teal tree. Now, you see the little colon there, so that's a pause. That's, then it goes on to say, as a teal tree and as an oak, whose substance is in them. This word substance is matzebiyeth. Yeah. Numbers 46:78, it means something stationary, a pillar or a monument. All the other times that this word is utilized, it's translated as pillar. So it's speaking about, a pillar, and if you consider the picture that Scripture is painting, then you'll see exactly what he's talking about. He's saying, but yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return. So a tenth of the people shall return. But they're going to be consumed at some point. They're going to be consumed by fire at some point. Now it says, as a teal tree and as an oak, whose substance is in them, or whose pillar, who are as a pillar, this in them wasn't actually there. This is in them actually really isn't there. It's implied. You know, so it's actually saying as a teal and as an oak, who's like a monument or like a pillar. You know, when they cast their leaves. Think about it. You know, this is an oak, beautiful oak, huge. You know, they can get up to 1,000 years old. You know, and this is a teal tree, huge as well. You know, and you'll notice something about both of them. They make pretty good coverings, don't they? So much so you see these folks camped out up under this one with picnic tables and carrying on. You know, and she gives you a perspective of how huge this tree really is. You know, likewise with this one. You know, but you'll notice that their covering, you know, is very thick and very widespread. You know, and this is a picture of Ephraim and Judah. You know, but Yahshua spoke. He said, as when they cast their leaves. You know, so he's speaking of when they lose their leaves is the covering. So this is actually a prophetic picture of the priesthood being cast off. You know, because it's the priest that covers, that whose job it was to cover all of Israel. And you had priests that was in the northern 10 tribes, and you had the Levites that was in the northern 10 tribes that were to cover Israel, and the priests that were in Jerusalem and Judah that was to cover the people. You know, but he says, you know, that they'll be cast off, and all that will remain is like the oak and the teal as when the leaves are cast. No covering. Can you see that? You know, the Temple of Solomon was destroyed on the 9th of Av. You know, that's when Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed the temple. And beyond coincidence, 657 years later, the temple of Herod, which was noted as being as beautiful and grandirized as Solomon's temple that he originally built, you know, was also destroyed on the exact same day, the 9th of Av. And Av is the 5th month, in case you wonder. You know, but point being, this covering would be removed, and it has been removed. After Yahshua, you know, this prophecy here speaks to exactly what happened. You know, and so this pillar, it says that they would remain as a pillar. Let's go back to the prophecy. Whose sustenance is in them when they cast off their leaves. Now the thing is, it says, so the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. Or so the holy seed shall be the pillar, or the monument, or the stationary thing, the thing that won't go away. And we see this happen every year. The trees lose their covering, and then for a spell, but then at some point, it begins to grow back. In the springtime, it starts to come back, and it regains that covering. Amen? You know, and this is what is being depicted in this passage. You know, Yah is simply saying that he's going to strip it bare, and it's going to be like a pillar, like a monument, you know, without its covering. Like so. You know, but what's the sustenance that's within it, which is what pushes the leaves back out, you know, in the spring when it warms up, will be the word. It says the holy seed. But we know the holy seed is the word of Elohim. Amen. You know, and we're going to actually learn that in this parable if we ever get to it. But yes, but it's a beautiful picture, you know, of what Yahshua was doing during his time here, as well as what he's doing right now in our time. Because in our time, we see the springtime, thematically speaking, the springtime has come about. That tree is once again, the land is once again populated, and that tree is still standing as a pillar. The only thing that land is noted for is the word of Elohim. It truly is the substance of it. It truly is the monument that is there. The only reason people go over there to visit is because of the word of Elohim. No matter if they're Islamic or Christian or Jewish, the three predominant religions of the world, they all go over there for the same reason, because of the word of Elohim. Other than that, they probably wouldn't get too much tourism, because they're always fighting. But people find their way over there, even in the midst of the fighting, to go to the Holy Land because of the word. But the scripture speaks about it being there, but it also speaks of it being consumed with fire. And that's what the end time prophecies concerning the land speak to. It speaks to this tree, these pillars being consumed by fire. And so we actually see in our time, the return, where the people actually don't return. So part 2 of Isaiah's prophecy is coming soon. It's in the making. But then Yeshua goes on to say, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Remember, he said, he who have ears to hear, let him hear this parable. So he's saying, if you can shema, if you can understand, if you can obey, good for you. But there are those who won't be able to get it. But he says, but blessed are your eyes and your, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Let me get my next reader reads verses 16 through 19.
But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see these things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear these things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which received seed by the wayside.
Okay, thank you. So, we see this is the parable of the sower and the seed. The parable of the sower. Now, the sower speaks to Yahushua. The seed speaks to the word of the kingdom. Yahushua is the one that sowed the word of the kingdom. But only by comparing all three versions of this parable can you really get the fullness of it. When we consider the word, because we're told that the seed is the word. Let's see, it says when one heareth the word. So we're told that the seed is the word. In Mark 4:14, which also has this parable, it tells us the sower soweth the word. So it tells us flat out. But then in in Luke 8, it tells us the seed is the word of Elohim. So here it is. It lets us know that the seed is the word, but it's not just not just the word. Luke 8:11 tells us it's not just the word; it's the word of Elohim. But here in Matthew 13, it teaches us it's not just the word, it's not just the word of Elohim, but it's a specific word. It's the word of the kingdom. You know, so we know that now that gives us the clues that we need to identify the sower, which was Yahushua, for he's the one who sowed the seeds of the kingdom. You know, he the one who gave us these parables so that we can have some type of understanding concerning the kingdom. Now, the ground speaks to the hearts of men, you know, and we learn that through verse 19. It speaks in the expounding. It says, you know, when one heareth the word of the kingdom and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. So we see that where the seed was sown, where the word of the kingdom is sown, is in the heart. Okay? Now, when we look at in Mark, at his version of the parable, you know, it teaches us that the one who take the seed out, you know, in verse 19, it tells us it's the wicked one. In Mark 15, it tells us Satan comes and immediately and taketh the word that was sown in their hearts. And in Luke 8, it tells us, cometh the devil. Now, we know that both of those are words for Satan. You know, both of them are names for Satan. Satan, the devil, the dragon. He is the wicked one. So now, by comparing all three, we see exactly who it is that's coming and taking this this word out of our hearts, this word of the kingdom out of our hearts. You know. Now, it says, this is he which received the seed by the wayside. Now, I have an example of the wayside type people. You know, those who heard the word of the kingdom. They didn't understand it. Then Satan came and snatched the word that was sown in their hearts. You know, in Yochanan 6:53, we have a beautiful example about many of the disciples that was following Yahushua, you know, besides the original 12. And it says in Yochanan 6:53, it says, Then Yahushua said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, ye have no life in you. Now, this is a word concerning the kingdom of Elohim, the kingdom of Hashemayim, the kingdom of heaven. You know, and the disciples that were following them, many of the disciples that were following them had a problem with this. They didn't understand it. You know, even as it speaks of that one type of people, you know, the type of people that are like the wayside. They hear the word, but they understand it not. And in John 6:66, it tells us, it says, from that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. So you can see they were following him, you know, and they heard the word, but they just didn't understand it. You know, and Satan came and catcheth away that which was sown in their heart. And it was too bad for them. Let me have my next reader read Matthew 13:20 and 21.
But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended.
Okay, now we have the second type of man, you know, or the second type of heart of man. We already went over the wayside, you know, those with hearts that's like the wayside heart, which receive the word but don't understand it, and then, you know, Satan comes and take it. But now we're dealing with stony places, you know, and stones, you know, speaks to, you know, rocks, and rocks speaks to things that you trust in, you know, hence, you know, Yahshua is our rock. You know, it speaks to things that you trust in. It speaks oftentimes to your El or to your God. And a lot of people, you know, claim the Most High is their El, you know, but their rock is actually something else. You know, and this is what this part of the parable speaks to, those who hearts are like stony places. It says in Matthew 26:3-4, we have an example. It says, then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people into the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Yahushua by subtlety and kill him. Okay? Now, this is the story of Judas Iscariot. Now, Judas, he started out really good. He received the seed into his heart, but his heart was stony. You know, he was trusting in something else outside of Yahshua. You know, and he heard the word and he received it with joy, but he didn't have no root in himself. And it endured for a while. It did. But then tribulation and persecution arose. You know, because he was one of the only Yahudim. And so he would have quickly got the word of what was going on. And so in Matthew 26:3-4, you know, they assembled the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people, that is, of the Yahudim. And they consulted how they might take Yahushua by subtlety and kill him. And you know who was next, right? His disciples. You know? So, it's not hard to see that Judas, you know, could have got stirred up and got a little afraid. And it drop down to verse 14-16. It goes on to say, then one of the 12, called Yahudas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests and said unto them, what will ye give me? And I will deliver him. You know, because at this time, you know, he didn't have no root. He see the tribulation and persecution building. He see the danger, you know, and he figured, well, I'll save myself and make a little something to boot. And it goes on to say, and they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time, he saw the opportunity to betray him. You know, so we see a beautiful example of a stony heart in Judas. You know, he was trusting in something else. Luke 8:13, it tells us that they on the rock are they which, when they hear, receive the word with joy, and these have no root, which for a while they believe, and in time of temptation fall away. You know, and Mark 4, it teaches us that they endure for a while, but afterward, when affliction or persecution arises. So, by putting them all three together, we see that because of tribulation, because of affliction, tribulation and persecution, affliction and persecution, and because of being tempted, they fall away. And so, that's those with the stony hearts. And so we see here, you know, a little bit of the persecution maybe, and definitely because of temptation. You know, he was tempted by the money. For he said, you know, I will deliver him, what will you give him? You know, and they covenanted for 30 pieces of silver. So he was tempted by the monetary gain that he could get, and let the seed that was sown into his heart die because it had no root. So Judas is a beautiful example of one with a stony heart. Matthew 13:22 says, he also that receives seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful. You know, so this is another type of man. You know, another type of the heart of man. You know, it's those who receive the word of the kingdom among the thorns. That is the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches, and it chokes the word and become unfruitful. I have an example of this type of person too, but let's consider Mark 4. Mark 4, in his rendition of the parable, he also says, because of the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches, but he adds, and the lust of other things entering in. So it's not just the cares of this world or deceitfulness of riches. It could be the lust of anything that creep in and choke the word, and it become unfruitful. You know, so it could be the cares of this world, it could be the deceitfulness of riches, or it could be the lust of other things, such as a man or a woman, a career maybe, whatever, you know, anything that your heart lusts for, it could choke the word. And that's important to know. Because you may, I don't care nothing about this world. I don't care nothing about no riches. You know, but that classic car, oh, that's my baby right there. You know, or whatever the case may be. You know, now, Luke 8, it also speaks of the cares of the world and the riches, but it also says, and the pleasures of this life. You know, which is close to those things that one lusts for, other things people lust for, but you know, it could be not be something that they lusting for. It could be something they already have and just don't want to lose. You know, so you know, again, these things will choke the word and cause it to become unfruitful. Now, the interesting thing about Mark 4, it speaks of the word becoming unfruitful, whereas Matthew speaks of the man becoming unfruitful. You know, so either way, you know, there's no fruit produced. You know, whether the word is choked out, causing the word not to become fruitful, the seed that was planted, or the man, you know, in which the seed is planted. You know, one of them get corrupt and there's no fruit. And we have an example, you know, and this example is Simon the sorcerer. You know, in Acts 8:9, it says, but there was a certain man called Simon, which before time in the same city used sorcery and bewitched the people of Samaria, giving out that himself was some great one. Yeah, he was the man. Goes on to say, to whom they all gave heed, from the least to the greatest, saying, this man is the great power of Elohim. And to him they had regard. Not to Yah, but to him they had regard, because that of a long time he had bewitched them with sorceries. But when they believed Philip, preaching the things concerning the kingdom of Elohim, and the name of Yahushua, the Messiah, they were baptized, both men and women. Then Simon himself believed also. When he was baptized, he continued with Philip and wondered, beholding the miracles and signs which were done. You know, Philip was doing a mighty work. You know, so much so that the man himself believed and was baptized. He received the seed, but as you're going to see, it was among thorns, and it would choke the word out. Let me have my next reader read Acts 8:17 through 19. Acts 8:17 through 23.
Then lay their hands on them. Then they laid their hands on them, and they received Ruach Kadosh. And when Simon saw that through laying on the apostles' hands Ruach Kadosh was given, he offered them money, saying, give me also this power, that on whomsoever I lay hands, he may receive Ruach Kadosh. But Peter said unto him, thy money perish with thee, because thou hast thought that the gift of Elohim may be purchased with money. Thou hast neither part nor lot in this matter, for thy heart is not right in the sight of Elohim. Repent therefore, for this is thy wickedness, and pray Elohim, if perhaps the thought of thine heart may be forgiven thee. For I perceive that thou art in the gall of bitterness and in the bond of iniquity.
Okay. So we see when they came and laid hands on them and they received the Ruach, something in Simon choked the word out. He seen opportunity. And he offered them money, that he could have the same power that whomsoever he lay his hands on may receive the Ruach Kodesh. Now, Cephas or Peter, he said, I perceive that thou art in the gall of bitterness and in the bond of iniquity. He seen that his heart was not right. His heart wasn't right, and those things that was within his heart worked to choke the word out. And so he's a beautiful example of those type of people that are like the thorns and the thistles, the things that's within their heart that ultimately work to choke the word out and cause them to be unfruitful. And then we have Matthew 13:23. It says, but he that received seed into the good ground. Hope we have some good ground in here. Good ground is he that heareth the word and understand it, which also bear fruit and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. And when we look at the account in Mark, it speaks of this good ground as being those who hear the word and receive it. And let me see. Yeah, it speaks of hearing the good word and receiving it. Here in Matthew 13:23, it speaks of them understanding it. So Mark 4:20 speaks of them receiving it. Matthew speaks of them understanding it. And Luke speaks of them keeping it. So you put them all together, you see the three different types of good ground. There are those who keep it, those who understand it, and those who receive it. If I had to guess, I would say those who simply receive it will produce 30-fold. And those who actually kept it receive 60-fold, and those who understood it will produce 100-fold. And we have an example of a 100-fold type heart. And for this example, I'm going to use Apostle Paul. And his account is in Acts 21:10 through 14, and it says, and as we tarried there many days, there came down from Judea, a certain prophet named Agabus. And when he was come unto us, he took Paul's girdle and bound his own hands and feet and said, thus saith Ruach HaKodesh, so shall the Yahudim at Jerusalem bind the man that owneth this girdle, and shall deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles. And when we heard these things, both we and they of that place besought him not to go to Jerusalem. But check out the brother's Apostle Paul's answer. Answer like a true 100-fold good ground type guy. Says, then Paul answered, what mean ye to weep and to break mine heart? For I am ready not to be bound only, but also to die at Jerusalem for the name of the Adonai, Yahushua. And when he would not be persuaded, we ceased, and then they saying, the will of the Adonai be done. You know, and this shows a beautiful picture of one who not only received the word, not only kept the word, but understood the word. He understood that Yah's purposes was greater than even his own life. And he was willing to lay down his life to please his Adonai. And so he's a beautiful example of that hundredfold individual. That's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.